Hello, folks, and welcome to Discover Slack, learning about the phenomenal communication tool that is Slack. I am Steve Dotto, and I am here to welcome you today. I'm joined by my dancing partner today, Dancing with the Stars. Dancing with the Stars. Mike Vardy is joining me. He's just back in Victoria, having been on a planes, trains, and automobiles journey home yesterday from Florida. Were you?
Yeah, I was in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Got caught up in storms?
Yeah, the flight was delayed out of Florida, and then I ended up running to the flight in Atlanta, just making it in time, and I got home at about 1 o'clock in the morning. But I'm a night owl, so I'm good.
There you go. Well, folks, we are in this webinar is we're just letting you get kind of in the room. It takes a few moments for the software to enroll everybody and get you all online. Just an overview of what we're working with today. We're using the new version of Webinar Jam, which is pretty good. It allows multiple screens, multiple presenters on screen at the same time. We're finding it pretty good. If you have any issues, just refresh your screen. If you have any issues with your feed at any point during the webinar, if you'll notice on the right-hand side, I see some of you already taking advantage of saying hello and letting us know where you're coming from. James from Dover in the UK, and we've got another Mike. I don't know where Mike's from. We got Linda from the UK. We're solid in the UK. There's David from Lake Como, Italy. Oh, man, that's a place I would like to go. Robert from Winnipeg. That's a place I've been. I'm going to be going through Winnipeg next week. Just through. I'm going to Thunder Bay. This is Marianne from Orlando and Mark from Vancouver. Welcome, one and all. Here's what we're going to be doing today. We are going to be taking a journey of discovery into Slack, teaching you folks why Mike and I consider it to be one of the kind of core productivity tools for both of us. For those of you who haven't used Slack before, we think we will open your eyes. It's a team-based communication tool that, it's important enough that we've built a big part of our businesses around. And we thought enough of it that we actually developed a course about almost 2 years ago now called Slack Made Easy, where we taught people how to use Slack and kind of got them on the fast track to using Slack. Well, Slack's made a lot of changes since then, and it's ever so popular, and our course has been doing well, so we decided to refresh the course. So that's the idea behind this webinar today, was to help fresh version, Slack Made Easy version 2. So we'll be talking about that towards the end of the webinar. But first, we've got a lot of training and a lot of tutorial-type stuff to do. Let's begin, though. I want to know, let me get my polls up here. I want to know how experienced you are with Slack, if you're using it now. So I'm going to load this poll up and I'm going to put it forward. So you'll see on the right-hand side there, we have this interactive poll. So let us know, are you currently using Slack? Not? Or are you one of, which was a big percentage of our first webinar, people who are sort of using Slack. They're using it, but they have no idea if they are using it to the power that they should be or using it in the right way, because it is a different way to approach communications. And look at that, Mike. We've seen the same kind of split. About 20% of the people have used it before. And good. So you people, as people are asking questions in the chat, those of you that are Slack users, we are looking for your feedback as well, because there's no one way to use these tools, really, is there, Mike?
No, not at all. You can make it your own, for sure.
And you'll see, actually, Mike will describe his system a little bit in when he does his demo. And then how I use Slack is quite a bit different, but still they are essential tools for us moving ahead. So we've got a slideshow with Mike that's going to share with you, which is an overview of Slack. So you at the very least today will leave this webinar with a comprehensive understanding of where Slack fits, and especially how it fits in the communication space, and especially how it can replace email for team-based communications, which we all agree is one of the biggest benefits to using Slack, is getting us out of email hell with our colleagues. Back when we worked in jobs, the amount of time and cycles wasted in every corporation with emails, especially the cover your ass emails where people are forwarding them just to show that they're busy and all that kind of stuff. Get rid of all that crap. It's not necessary. Emails to communicate, Slack is a better way to communicate. So even if you just understand it from that perspective, your time spent with us today is going to be well worthwhile. We'll take an hour today. Mike will do a slideshow. We will take a Q&A. We'll answer as many questions as we can. Then about the 45-minute mark or so, I'll fill you guys in on the course, because we are here to sell a course today, and it's a good course. So we'll let you know about the course for those of you that might be interested in, and then we'll continue with Q&A until all of the questions have been asked and all of the answers have been served. So does that sound like a fair thing? Let's end the poll and let's see where we sit. So fully 75% of you, 80% of you are not using Slack or just sort of using Slack. So this is awesome sauce. This is good for you guys. We hope that we're going to deliver some real significant value to you there. And the 20% that are there here, I think you'll get something out of it as well. And if you don't get anything out of it, at least you can give something back in by offering your sage advice to our folks in the chat, because the chat gets really active. So I think, is there anything I missed, Mike?
No, I think we're ready to go.
If you have to leave early, if you have technical issues, there'll be a replay link sent out an hour after we finish the webinar, which will be a full replay, so you can view the whole thing if you happen to miss it, or if you happen to have internet issues, which there's a lot of weather around the world today. And so that's what an intelligent statement, Steve.
There's always weather
around the world today, Steve.
Just today,
air. There's a lot of air in the atmosphere around here, Mike.
Hot air at this point.
that was a blast of hot air. All right, so I'm going to let Mike take over the screen. I'm going to jump over into chat. And by the way, as you ask questions, if you want them to make sure that we notice them, if the chat gets busy, make sure you click on that little question box. There's a little speech bubble to the side of the chat. When you click on that and choose that, it will then phrase your comment as a question, and it demarks it differently so Mike and I can easily identify it, and so that we can answer his questions. Yeah. So we will encourage you to do that. So without any further ado, Mike, get in and get telling us all about Slack.
All right. I'm going to click the screen share option again. I'm going to share my entire screen and ended up crashing things. So, all right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks to everybody for joining us today. I want to talk about how to make Slack work for you and teams of all sizes. One of the questions that came up in the initial webinar we had earlier today was, how is Slack good just for me? Is it good for small teams, large teams? It can work for teams of all sizes. Steve has a smaller team than I do because I have different subcontractors working with me on different things. Lee, who was in the earlier webinar, who wasn't able to join us for this one, he's a freelancer. He's a one-man army, and he uses Slack to work with his clients. But you can make Slack work for you. And I've got two distinct ways that I use Slack that I really find are really powerful in terms of communication. So first off, what is Slack? I mean, there's some people out there that just don't know what it is. Slack is at its core a robust communication tool. It is web-based, although there are plenty of native applications. In fact, I use the native applications on my Mac. If you have a Windows machine, you can use it there. I have it on my iPhone. You could have it on Android. The Surface has it. Every viable platform. My Apple Watch has it. They all have the capability for you to use Slack. So Slack is a comprehensive and robust communication tool that you can use in many ways to help communicate with teams large and small. Here is my Slack setup with my team. And I'm just showing a small sidebar of it. There you see Lee in the bottom of my image there. It's a great thing is you can actually have your image on the screen, so you can see who you're talking to as opposed to just initials. But what you have here is in the sidebar is you see the different components of what a Slack setup at its basic core looks like. This is the left side. I'm not showing you the preferences menu. I'll show you that when I go through a little bit of a live tour at the end of the slide deck. I'm also not going to show you the notification settings right now. I'll show that to you a little bit later. But because I can't show a pointer on this, I'm going to just go from top to bottom. So if you pay attention here, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So at the top, it says the name of my team. And every Slack team has its own private URL because, again, it is web-based. And then you can, of course, install it on whatever machine that you want or any device that you want. This is my productivityist team. I have other teams that I'll show you here in a little while. You can see that I'm an active user. That little active thing has popped up. By having that green dot, it shows that I am currently online. When we get lower in the screen here, you'll see that I can tell that certain people aren't active or actually in do not disturb mode. Right underneath the active area, it says threads. And that's an interesting new component of Slack that's been added. And I know we dive into this a lot more in the course, but what it allows you to do is see where you're mentioned. If you're mentioned in a channel, if you're mentioned in a direct message, wherever you are mentioned, those threads get put into that thread area. So you could kind of think of it as a collective of the communication that involves you. So if you're already using Slack, Or if you are worried that, hey, I'm going to use Slack, but how is it different than email? I don't want to be drowning in Slack messages that aren't pertinent to me. The threads allow you to do that. And we go over that a lot more in the course. Channels are the core component of Slack. And what channels are they allow you to have subtopics or little topics or areas of discussion, or even departments if you're a larger team, where common people and common interests can be discussed. So you can have as many people in a channel as you want. You can have people join channels by default. So if you're running let's say a design firm, and you want only the designers to be in one channel, you could have that. If you want to have salespeople only in a sales channel, you can have that. This is mine, and you can see there's the blog, and the only ones that are in that are myself and Jim Woods and Claire, who you'll see here. Jim and Claire help me with the content for the site. You can see that there's one called coaching, and it's locked, and that's a private channel that only certain people are in. That are obviously coaches for Productivityist. Then there's ebooks that we've been thinking about, general common stuff, newsletter, which again is related to the blog, the podcast, ideas that people think we might want to have for posts. There's the films, which again is a lockdown channel for me and the filmmakers. There's reviews that we've been thinking about doing, random stuff. And the key to channels is you don't want to have too many of them. And I think actually we have too many right now. You want to have as many as you need, but as few as possible, because really where the next core component of power happens is in the direct messaging, which you see at the bottom. And that shows me who I can direct message with my team. And this is where the email replacement comes in, especially one-to-one. So if I want to message Anne, who is my wife and my partner in the business, I can message her directly here without sending it to her email inbox. And the great thing about this is that way we know that that is coming from me related to the business. It's not me sending her, hey, just wondering what we're going to do about the kids tonight, or hey, how's this going with this? It's related directly to the business. And you can see that Claire, who is my operations assistant, she's actually not available right now because she's got the little Z or Z, depending on where you're from, next to her circle, which means she's in do not disturb mode. And some of those other channels, by the way, above the direct messages, those are built in by integrations. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that in a second. But one of the biggest things that Slack has done for me, it's been an email replacement. Somebody asked in the earlier webinar, they said, how much would you say you're saving on email as a result because of doing this, of separating your internal email, which is what Slack does for me, versus your external email? And I would say I'm saving about an hour a day, I'll be honest, because I would be spending that time in email, not just going through those emails, but sifting through the emails to find out which ones are related to my team stuff versus which ones are related to external sources. So to show you how that looks, this is the direct messaging thing zoomed in a little bit. And you can see this is my entire team that I work with that I've direct messaged recently. There's that little plus sign next to it, which shows I could actually direct message other members of my team that I haven't talked to in a while, or maybe haven't messaged ever in the app. But I talked to my wife, who's involved in the administrative part. There's Claire, who's my operations assistant. Grady is one of the filmmakers I work with. So I don't need to email him. And because he works with so many other film makers in his own business out there, if I message him through Slack, he sees it right away, knows what it's related to, and there's less friction. There's less of him trying to figure out, well, what does Mike want, or who's this? He knows exactly what it's going to be related to. Jim is my editor. John is my podcast producer. Lee, of course, has helped build Slack Made Easy. He's pretty much built most of it himself, if not all of it. And so Lee is who I've been communicating with extensively. And you can see that I have that highlighted right now because him and I were talking in the last webinar. Melissa Stegenis is my former operations assistant. She's now a coach. And Stabe there, Carl Stabe, he is my, he helps me with sales funnels and stuff. So I can direct message all of these people. I cannot remember the last time I got an actual email from somebody on my team. It's been communicated solely inside of Slack. And I know Steve was talking earlier, and maybe he can shed some light on this a little bit later, but Slack, I don't think he's received an email from his team members in a long time either. So here's how I use Slack with my team. So you can see, and I'm going to give you a nice broad picture before we dive into the kind of active demo of the situation. So this is what Slack looks like just at its native install. This is on my Mac. And this is just a screenshot. We'll do some actual active stuff here in a little bit. But you could see there's those channels. There's the all threads area. There's the direct messages. And inside the channel, you can see that there's a conversation happening. And this is one with Melissa and Mike. This was the general channel that everybody joins when they become a member of the Productivityist team community. Because when you invite people, you could say what channels they should automatically be added to. And you can see at the top, if you look at the very top, there's the general, and it's got the hashtag in front of it. Then there's a star, which means it's a starred, a starred channel. There's 15 people inside that channel. One post is pinned inside of that channel. And then there's a little thing next to it. It's kind of muted. You might not be able to see it very well, but it's a phone. And yes, you can make calls in Slack, video and audio calls, natively in Slack. There are some other integrations that allow you to do screen sharing as well, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I don't need to use Skype anymore. I can use Slack to talk to people natively, either just through my mobile app. I could talk to them on my Mac and get great quality video and picture. Lee and I have done that. It's actually demonstrated in the course. It's a great tool. I have a meeting every week with my content editor, and we just use Slack for it. And the great thing is that because there's integrations with Google Drive and stuff, we can do everything happening in there when we're actually actively communicating. Oh, that was weird. Sorry about that. And then there's the search area, so you could search for things. There's people that you're mentioned. There's, again, starred messages. There's files you can drop in there. I'm going to show that during the actual demo. And you can see there's 4 other teams I belong to. And each of these teams are related to a different Slack team. So there's the Productivityist Patreon community, which are the people that are supporting the podcast. There's, of course, the course Slack Made Easy, which I belong to. And then there's a couple other ones there, and I can quickly switch back and forth between these. If you're using the web app, you can't do that. You can only see one team at a time. You'd have to have multiple tabs open. But with a native install, you can actually quick switch between the different teams here. So let's talk about the community building tool. I talked about my Patreon community, and that's one of the perks that people get when they support the podcast, is they get to actually talk to me and talk to other members of the other listeners of the community, and we can actually create a rapport. And a lot more membership sites and a lot of software companies, a lot of beta builds are using this because it builds community. And because some people don't want to use Facebook, some people don't want to use native software on their Word. Like if they're using a WordPress site, they don't want to use a membership software. They just want to have an add-on that they can do this with. And Slack allows for this very easily. And I'll show you how I use it with my podcast community right now. So again, the nice thing about Slack is you can modify it. So this is a darker image, so I could see what that one looks like versus what the Productivityist one looks like. And you can see, again, at the top, it lists my community. And of course, there's the ellipses there. It kind of indicates that there's a longer name, and there is. It's the Productivityist podcast community. I am, again, active. It says Mike Vardy, and I've customized the color, so it's not green, but it's a bluish hue. That's the native version of what Slack offers. Again, all threads that I've mentioned in, and then there's several channels. There's 13 of them, and we could serve to probably cull some of these as well. But there's in-group accountability, so people can say, hey, how are you doing with certain tasks? Are you keeping up with your journaling? And people in the community can actually help each other stay accountable. There's discussion of different apps. So if people want to talk about Slack or talk about Asana or Todoist or whatever apps we're talking about, we could do that there. If people have questions for me specifically and they want to make sure everyone sees them publicly, they can ask, and it goes out into that public channel. Then there's the bonus episode discussions and suggestions. So when I put a bonus episode out, people get to see it there, and if they have, and they can talk about it. And then if they have suggestions of things they'd like me to talk about on a bonus episode, they can suggest it in that channel. Any book recommendations that either I want to throw out there or members of the community do, that happens in the book recommendations channel. There's a general discussion channel, which is just general, chit chat. Monthly challenges, which we're going to implement, which are, hey, what are we doing this month? This has a lot to do with my monthly theming that I talk about. Then there's my methodology I teach called the Now Year Method. So if they have a question or they want to talk about anything specific to that, that channel is perfect for that. People talk about what they're going to do for their weekend. That goes in the weekend preview channel. And then there's the weekly episode discussion and suggestions, which functions the same as the bonus ones, except for the fact that we're going to talk about, the weekly episodes. So that's kind of how that all works out. And, I don't want to show you the names or anything necessarily here now, but this is where, I communicate with my community here. So there's no comments happening in Patreon generally for any of the podcasts I put up. All that stuff happens here, and it's been really engaging. Anytime somebody signs up for me on Patreon, they say, hey, can I have a Slack invite right away? And it doesn't take me very long to give them one of those either. But I want to talk about integrations quickly before I go into the demo, because integrations are a lot of people in the last webinar asked about integrations, and what they are basically different add-ons or apps that you can integrate with Slack to help use it and get even more out of it. So what are they? Well, here's the ones I use with Productivityist. So I'm seeing this on the web. So this is the web version. And you can see that I've got several configurations lined up, and there are two. One's not visible there, and it's the appear.in one, which we'll talk about a little bit, I'm sure. Steve, I know, loves that one. But you can have 10 integrations on the free plan. Oh, yeah, by the way, did I mention all of this is free? I'm using the free version of Slack. I'm not paying for it. There are some limitations, but they are so minor that I haven't even had to consider going to the paid plan as of yet. But I use an Asana integration. Why? Because I want to see when tasks are completed, and I don't always want to be in Asana to do that. Dropbox, so I can link to Dropbox files and have those instantly added to Slack. Same thing with Google Drive. All my blog posts are edited in Google Drive, so they go there. I have TTT for any kind of sales that are happening. I get something that shows up in a channel there. That's mainly for my wife to see anytime we sell something, so it makes her feel better. There's an API tester that we do, and Lee did that a lot when we were building Slack Made Easy. There's a Twitter integration, so I can see all my tweets, any tweets that go up, because I don't send out the Productivityist Twitter updates. My Claire does that. Workflow, which is an iOS app that allows for different workflows, and I know Lee set that one up as well. There's Zapier, which is another automation tool, a lot like IFTTT. And then during the last webinar, I had an open spot, and I thought, I'll add Zoom, because I use Zoom for my webinars. You probably just saw that pop up on the screen. I did a coaching call just before we went on the air here, and I record my coaching calls in Zoom. So to have that Zoom integration, especially with more coaches jumping on board, I can see when people are jumping on and making appointments in Zoom. So there's more to Slack, and I want to walk through my teams right now. So I'm going to give you a bit of a mini walkthrough before we dive into some of the questions. And I've got about 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll start to take some questions. So here we go. Let's go into Slack, and you can see here, these are my teams. So this is a live instance, and I'll open it up a little bit bigger so that maybe people can see it a little bit more. You can see it stretches it out. So here are the preferences, and you can see there's a lot here. Profile account, I can set myself to away. I can invite people, manage the members, team settings, I can customize it. So if I wanted to say, and this goes right to the web, I can customize emojis. I can have a new team icon. I can have loading messages. When you load up Slack, you could say, I want to see more different types of messages. So there's special editions by Brene Brown. Like, it's really interesting what you can do there with even just that. But you can see here's all the threads. So if I see if there's any threads that I've been involved in will be collected right there. Nothing's shown up here for that as of yet. But I've got my blog channel. I've got all these different channels here, and I've got messages. Lee and I actually exchanged some messages right here. Some quick, hey, Lee, great demo, et cetera, et cetera. So Lee and I were able to talk really quickly. In the Slack course, if Steve and I were to talk right now, I'd be able to say the same thing to Steve. I'd be like, hey, Steve. Now, he might not be able to respond really quickly, but he'd be able to see it and go, oh, this is direct messaging. He'd be able to respond, and I'll see a notification pop up if that happens. This is my podcast area, and you can see that there's threads here, and I'm mentioned here. So you can see here's me mentioned in different discussions and such. And I could see all my general threads. And oh, look, there's a message, a little red dot. And Steve's probably saying, yo, concentrate on the presentation. Stop goofing off. So there you go. So really quick stuff. But I can see all my threads here. I can see the different accountability messages. I can see the different people that have worked with me and stuff. But the other cool thing is there's beta testing. So this is a beta testing group I belong to. And I was saying one of the things I'm working on, I'm testing this thing called Z by Timular. And I said, hey, you know, my battery's dead. And of course, the battery housing popped off. So instead of emailing Manuel, I was able to actually message him and say, hey, look, did the Z fall to the ground? Like, we had this really interesting thread. And I didn't have to send him an email. If I tried to send him an email, it would have been buried because they did a massive Kickstarter. I was able to directly talk to him here. And you could see there's all these different features and stuff that are mentioned in here. And then ConvertKit, I'm a member of ConvertKit. This is what I use. And you could see that there's broadcast. They have very few channels, but I could see, you know, I want to just forums, landing pages. They talk about different things here. So instead of going onto a Facebook page, I can learn about ConvertKit right here. They're going to do an AMA here on Friday. So it's a really great place to say, you know, how do I engage with people in a way that makes sense and that I can feel like I'm part of a community. Now, and I could quickly switch through just by hitting Command 2, Command 3, Command 1, and move back and forth between all of these. Now, the great thing is, again, Slack allows me to communicate, keeps all this stuff in a silo. But what you want to do, and this is the last thing I kind of want to touch on, is when you belong to this many teams, and I belong to more teams than this, you want to kind of limit how many you have in here because you don't want to be constantly interrupted. I mean, for example, I can tell Timular that I don't want to be notified for, you know, do not disturb schedule. I can say I never want to be disturbed during these times, right? I can say that, and I can close this off here. But for now, if I said I don't want to be disturbed, I can say for the next 2 hours, don't disturb me. Same thing with ConvertKit. I can say for the next 2 hours, don't disturb me. But I can have automatic settings as well, like I said, which says, you know what, I don't want to be notified between 1 a.m. and 9 a.m. here. Or I can go even more custom and say, I want to change my notification preferences so that I only get notifications when I am getting, when I'm only getting direct messages or highlighted words. I can have different, like, there's just so much modification you can do. There's a lot in Slack, and I've just scratched the surface with this presentation. And let's dive, Steve, I'd love to hear how, I know that you were surprised with some of the ways that I used it. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you use, I think there's a lot there that needs to, there's so much there.
Well, it is. And my team is much smaller than yours. I've got just 5 members of my team, but we are far flung, right across North America and into Europe, different team members. And as you say, since we started using Slack, I don't think I've received any emails other than the odd forwarded email that's come in from one of our community members. So for us though, we divide Slack into team communications, conversations, only things that would have been an email. All of our project management, we do in Asana. And this is one of the areas that a lot of people, I think, get confused with all of the different apps. There's so many different tools out there that have an element of chat and conversation from Facebook Messenger, right through Skype, right through Evernote has now work chat. Everybody's got chat built into their tool. So people are wondering, how do I define and where do we use it? So for us, all of our conversation, that's general updates, it happens in Slack. We only deal, and Asana has very robust chat built into it as well. It's actually a pretty good chat engine. But all of the comments there are task specific. Steve, what date does this particular piece of content have to be posted? Can I get your approval on this graphic? Where is this? It's specifically related to the task that we're working on within Asana. So we've got a nice division of labor between the two. And it took a while for the team to figure it all out. It took probably 3 weeks using it, where some messages wouldn't necessarily get lost, but wouldn't be conveyed as efficiently as possible because they were in the wrong metaphor. We were using the wrong metaphor, but we've got our head around it now. So.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people, I like the fact that Slack, again, primarily for communication, I can do things like drop Dropbox links in there, and I can drop, we didn't really get into this, but I can drop like things like posts, so I can put announcements in there. I can do things like that. Whereas Asana I use primarily for task management. And one of the integrations I have is Asana because I just want to see when things are happening in there. I don't want to see every single thing.
It's interesting.
So, yeah.
we had the Asana integration integrated as well. Now we should say integrations are when we add an outside service into Slack.
Yeah.
And we had it so that every time there was a notification coming through in Trello, or not in Trello, excuse me, in Asana, it would reflect through into Slack. And it got too busy because we have so many, because our production process, there's so many touch points on each of our videos that I was getting notifications of, like, Liz has finished the thumbnail for this video. I don't really need to know that. So we had to turn that off. So we were over communicating and oversharing for quite a period of time. So here's what we're going to do, folks. Let's what we're going to do now is we're just at the half-hour mark, so we're halfway through. We're going to do 10 minutes of Q&A where we're going to take all of your questions and we're going to work our way through as many of the questions as we can in the order that they've been received. And we're going to do that for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to take a little bit of a break from that, and I'm going to fill you guys in on our Slack Made Easy course, which we've just refreshed and is available and for sale as of today. That'll take maybe 5 or 6 minutes to explain it to you. It's not going to take too long. The course isn't all that expensive. It's a $40 course. This isn't a massive investment. It was a big investment in time for us, but it's not a massive financial investment for you. We'll fill you in on how you enroll in the course and what you get from the course. And then we'll come back to questions and we'll answer questions as long as they are there. Does that sound like a fair arrangement? It doesn't matter. It is fair. I've decided. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to work my way through the questions, and Mike and I will answer them. So Ken K, I love this question. Other than commanding my team to start using Slack, thou shalt use Slack. Any good suggestions on how to entice them? Well, I've got one suggestion, is don't respond to them unless they do. I know it can be hard, but tough love is sometimes what's required. Mike, what's your suggestion?
Yep. I agree. I think that you need to show them the benefits of actually using the platform and say, look, like I said, I'm saving like an hour a day in email, right? And what you want to say to them is, look, if you don't want to miss internal communication, this is where we're going to put it. So we could drop files in there and everything. Because outside communication, you're not going to use Slack for that necessarily, at least not right away. You can have guest accounts when you pay for when you pay for Slack. You can have permissions and stuff surrounding the different Slack type, the types of members that you can have. So I would say, look, we're going to do internal communication this way. And the reason it's going to make you more productive, because you're not going to be sifting through your email inbox trying to find, what's from who on your team. And yes, I know there are filters and you can sort by, but this just creates an absolute boundary on either side. So I would say that's what I would explain the benefits, and then say we're going this way. So that tough love that you're mentioning, Steve, is worth it. I had to do it. I mean, a lot of people were like, "What do you mean? Why don't we just use it?"
We had some resistance. There was resistance.
But everyone I've worked with that has gone with Slack, and I've worked with some organizations that you got to use Slack. It's now all like I'm talking like manufacturing firms that are used to using email for every little thing. They're now barely using email at all.
One thing that you will help is a lot of times people do the email because of the audit trail that email creates. Slack does the same. Yeah. It saves all of your messages. It's very easy to search for those messages. You can find them through the threads. So you're not losing that. So that's important to convey. And I see Nicole and Louisa have similar questions about how do you introduce it to clients and how do you sell it to email junkies. You do it through efficiency by talking about how much time is wasted in email. If it helps, take a look. We've got at Dottotech, we've got a free course called 3 Steps to Inbox Zero. In the webinar that I do that leads into that, I talk about the negative impact email has on our productivity and our health. That might be worth having a look at that and sharing some of those thoughts. I think that's a good place to start. Maria says, I am a team member of Slack for an organization and I belong to, and I'd like to create my own Slack team unrelated to the organization. How do I set that up? It's really simple. You just start a new Slack channel. You just go into your Slack account and say, start a new channel.
Yeah, if you want to start a team, if you want to start a separate team,
that's
you just go to slack.com. Yeah, go to slack.com, sign out of your team at slack.com and create a new team with a new URL. Simple, super simple.
And then you invite people.
And then you can add them to the trick, and someone asked this, and I know we'll get to it, but I might as well answer it now. The difference between the web-based and the native apps is web-based, you'd have to have multiple tabs open to see all the teams you're members of. So if you're a member of 3 teams, you have to have 3 tabs open. With the apps, you can actually have as many or as few of them on there as you want. So for example, you saw on my Mac, I had 5 of the teams on there. I belong to 7. I keep 2 of them. I'm just members. I think 2 of them, I think one of them is the team we used to be on with Eric, right? Like when we were doing the Blabs. It's not on there anymore because we were barely doing anything. It's so on my on my iPhone, I have 3 teams on there. On my Apple Watch, it's just productivityist. So you
Mike
can
just
you
got
can
his Apple
modify
Watch.
that.
We can't go by what he says about the watch. It's very exciting.
I'm very excited. Very excited.
Okay. Ken says, "Can you do group video calls with Slack? The Slack calling app, if you pay for it, I believe it will allow for group calls. Am I right, Mike? I think on that.
Screen Hero, yeah, I think the way they've integrated Screen Hero does that. But there's also that appear.in.
But if you use an integration, we use appear.in, which we just go /appear space and then name the room.otech. We do group calls almost every day with our team using Slack. It's one of the it's my favorite single integration within Slack. So yes, you can, Ken. Michelle, I use Trello, and I would be interested. Are there any ideas for integrating it with this or app?
There are.
It integrates perfectly with
there
Trello.
Are.
All of the same integration that we were talking about with Asana is there for Trello.
Yep. You can go and we talk about the integrations in the course, but if you go to slack.com and you look up the different integrations, like there are plenty of integrations, and Trello is one of them.
Oh yeah, well, when you go to the there are I'm not making it up now. There are hundreds and hundreds of integrations now for Slack. Slack is really one of the things about Slack is people in the last webinar kept asking us about all of the other apps, which is fine. It's good that you're interested in the other communication apps, but Slack established itself in the heart of Silicon Valley with the other app companies right early on. So consequently, because they were there with all of the other developers, the other developers kind of got to know to use it and then wanted to use it and then built their own integration. So it's really ahead of the rest of the crowd as far as its integration. The cool kids all got on Slack early, and everybody else is playing catch up now. So
yeah, and that also includes the people who are the services that are integrating chat within their existing services, like Evernote and Asana, even with team conversations. I know for a fact that when I saw team conversations coming, I know the folks at Asana pretty well. I'm like, this is your guys' response to Slack, isn't it? And there was a bit of a wry nod. They all know, and you're seeing it happen. Dropbox, even there's chat going on there. So I think that there's some elements to that as well. Is that there are tools. Slack is primarily a communication tool where you can add things to it. Whereas other tools are primarily, like Asana is primarily a project management tool, Trello the same, all these other ones, but then they add an element of communication to it. So there's a place for both. It's just a matter of how deep are you into both, whereas where you want to use them.
Yes. Nicole asks, there's a difference between the web and the desktop version. And the main one is that you have all of your channels in the desktop version. And it's also the way notifications come through a system level as opposed to a web level. I always have the desktop version open. It's set to auto open as soon as my computer boots up. And also,
well, it keeps you from getting distracted by the web too.
Yes. And the app, the smartphone app is brilliant. It really helps keep you in control of your entire team. There's exactly it. Dominic, you're exactly what we're talking about. What's the difference between Slack and River? Okay, we don't know. We hear good things about River. We hear good things about HipChat, about other team-based communication tools. But both Mike and I, when we started to use Slack, it became the tool that we use. And it's such a robust tool, and how we have integrated it in our process precludes us from really becoming the same level expert on other chat apps, because we would have to fold them into our business lives, disrupt our entire business, train our entire staff, and come up with new systems of doing things for these other systems. So this is not the place to compare. This is the place, what we're talking about today, is if you're interested in a team communication tool, we found one that we know works, and that if you apply it, you can get the same benefits as we are talking about. So that's what we can convey here, not an objective comparison with the other team communications tools. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Janice, I don't understand how direct messaging gets into the channel. So if you talk to Lee about 3 or 4 channel topics, how does Slack know where to put it?
The way Slack knows is because every user has a. I'm hearing an echo. Every user has has their own identifier. So in the messaging app, you're going to see things like at Lee. You know, when I message Lee, it's actually not putting the at Lee in there, but it is. So anytime I mention something with Lee, he's going to see it in his direct messaging area. So that's where he sees that. Inside of the threads is where I mention him in channels, right? So if I say at Lee, his name will pop up, and that's where he gets mentioned in the channel. So that's where threads pop up. So when you want to look at all your threads, that's where you see every time you're mentioned in an actual channel, whereas direct messaging is where you were mentioned as an actual direct message. And the cool thing is again, you could say, I only want to see times when my name is mentioned, or I only want to get notifications when I get a direct message, and I'll go in and check threads at any given time. So Slack knows based on your username in a lot of ways and how it finds itself inside the channels. But I honestly use direct messaging if I want to talk to Lee more often than mention his name in channels. That's just kind of how I work.
Okay, good. So I'm going to just jump in right now, and I am going to fill you folks in on, we're going to take a little bit of a hiatus from the questions, and I'm going to fill you in on what's happening with our mini course or our course, if you happen to be interested. So as about almost 2 years ago now, we created Slack Made Easy, the Slack Made Easy course, which we offered. Now, I think in a stroke of genius, we made one important decision when we first created the Slack Made Easy course, is rather than creating the course and delivering it in a typical course delivery mechanism or within some sort of a WordPress install or something like that, we decided to use Slack itself and create a Slack team which contained the course. And I'm just going to start screen sharing here with you right now, and I'm going to show you just briefly what I'm talking about. So is the course. And if we go into, that's my conversation, that's my private conversation with Mike. You were asking about the direct messaging, but here is the introduction to the course of the old version. There was August 20th, 2015 was when we launched the old course. So we have, instead of having a learning management system, which is typical where you go through and you have videos and text installed, instead what we have right here, it is we have the text, we have the graphics. Mike just sent me a message. And here we have the video installed, plus all of the questions and answers that our first cohort of students asked as we worked our way through. So using the tool to learn the tool turbocharges the discovery engine for you. You will learn to use Slack faster and more effectively with this system than any other that I can imagine, because you're in it every day, and you know that by using something, you're just going to learn it that much faster. So that's the structure of the course. Now, what we're doing is we're right now replacing all of the original channels, which were all of the lessons, 8 lessons. It's still 8 lessons, but we're replacing it with the new content and new videos. The other thing, the first time that we delivered the course is we created monolithic videos. We created these long videos that were 20 and 25 minutes long, describing each section. But then as Slack changed out what happened within each section, is parts of those videos became dated. So we rebuilt when we redesigned the course based on feedback that we got from our community, is we made the videos much shorter snippets. So they're between 3 and 5 minutes. They can be replaced when something is updated. So we've made the course more modular and easier for us to update the information as Slack changes. The basic premises have all stayed the same. The course still has tremendous value as it sits, as far as I'm concerned, but it's going to be far more easy to digest now as we've gone from basically 12 or 14 videos for the entire course now to about 40 videos, but they're much shorter and they're much more germane on a single topic. So it just that was kind of our learning experience as we went through the course. Now, I know you're wondering, how much the course cost, Steve? Okay, actually, let me just jump back over into Webinar Jam just for a moment, and I'm going to push through so that you can see the offer. There it is. This is where you click the link if you are interested. the back end of Webinar Jam there for a moment. But here, I won't spend too much time talking about all of the details of what's in the course. We consider that it's a phenomenal way to learn Slack. It's been tried and true now. We've put many, many people through the course. There are, as I say, 8 modules from the basics of channel to building your teams, dealing with messaging, managing your digital files and assets, your account settings, Slack on the go, using the mobile app, integrating third-party apps, and then a power tip, a shortcut and power tip section. So nicely defined modules. The cost is $40, $39.95 for a single user. And if you've got a team and you've got more than 5 people on the team, then you'll save money by going with our Slack team pack, which is $200, and that will allow you to have up to 10 members. Now, all 10 members don't have to enroll immediately. If you've got 7 members or 6 members on your team and you're hiring somebody in another month, don't worry. You can keep adding people over time to get up to that 10-person level. And then you're all going through the course and you've all got the same base level introduction. I think that Slack Made Easy is an ideal course, especially for small teams, to have all of the team members work their way through it, because it will just facilitate you all embracing it that much more quickly. Plus, each of you tends to look at it with a different lens. Consequently, when you start sharing and you start actually implementing it in your own workflow, people will come up with better, more creative ideas that will make it work more effectively for you. So the link is there beside us right now, so you new content will be available probably by tomorrow evening. We should have it all online for you. We just got, Mike and I have got a little bit of work to do as far as populating, but all of the content is built. We just have to slide it into the new modules right now. So we're kind of looking forward to doing that. So that answer.
We wanted to make sure that we have the channels lined up in the right way, so that way people are because what you have to do is you have to say, here's the older previous content. We didn't want to lose any of the previous content. There were a lot of great conversations surrounding that. So what we wanted to do is add another version of those channels, so that way you can see where the new content is, all the fresh videos at the top, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why we're in the midst of doing right now.
Yeah. There's nobody else, as far as I know, nobody else is delivering courses in Slack. So it's kind of, we're trailblazers. I didn't mention there's a money back guarantee, and I think we put hundreds of people through, and I think we've processed maybe 2 or 3 money back guarantees. It's been good. It's been nice.
Kay asked a question. So speaking of putting a course in Slack, so Kay said, could you use Slack instead of the comments feature or forum for courses? As I only want people in each course to chat to each other, and could this also be displayed on a website? Yes, you can do that. Absolutely. It's a matter of whether you want to do that outside of a course platform. I think that there are pros and cons to it. You cannot embed Slack at this point inside of a website without doing some coding, I believe. I don't see any integrations. I did some looking while Steve was showing you guys this to see if there's anything out there. Of course, every time I went looking for something, like, no, but try this instead and try this instead. And some of them they're all pricier options. I would say it is a neat idea. I mean, I use it for my Patreon community. ConvertKit is using it for their community building. So I think that there's some merit there, especially when you see a lot of courses saying, hey, and you'll get our access to our private Facebook group. Well, instead you could say you get access to our Slack community. So there's lots of ways to make that work.
I think once there is integration, if you can put it into WordPress, if there becomes a plugin or something, so you can put it into your site or into your LMS in some way. But yeah. For now, I mean, if you ask me my advice, I would say private Facebook group. That's what we do. That's what most people do. And it certainly might be a better way to go, but it does have the potential, and you got us thinking. All right. Chris asks, what are the limits to the number of people? I don't think there is a limit. And there's not does Slack set a limit of how many people you can have on a team?
No, there isn't. It's the limitations for Slack are basically, you get 10 apps or service integrations on the free plan. You get only up to 10,000 of your team's most recent messages that are searchable. The archives are still there. It's just you can only search up to 10,000. There's 5 gigabytes of total file storage for the entire team. And then there's the voice and video calls and the 2-factor authentication. Once you start paying for people, which is $8 per month or $6.67, and this is US dollars, keep that in mind, then you get unlimited searchable archives, unlimited apps and services. You've got retention policies, guest access, priority support, OAuth via Google, mandatory 2-factor authentication, whereas in the free plan, it's just 2-factor. It's not mandatory. Custom user groups, so you could have that. group voice and video calls. So that's where the group ones come into play. And then 10 gigabytes of file storage per team members and custom profiles. You go all the way to Plus, which allows you to have the SAML-based single sign-on, compliance exports of all messages, less, just a fraction under 100% guaranteed uptime SLA, 24/7 support with 4-hour response time. There's user provisioning and deprovisioning, so you can kick users off, add them on. Real-time active delivery sync with a whole bunch of different login options, and 20 gigs per person. So there are ways to pay, and it's per person, but for limits of people, nope. You can have as many people as you want. Just know that the other limitations exist.
Yeah, and the practical aspect is, I think Slack is for teams, and too big a team would be very difficult to manage the conversations in. So, you'd be wanting to break people into smaller groups.
Yep, exactly.
Good. Oh, my phone is ringing. It's okay. But it's coming through my headset. It's in a different room. I didn't even bring it in, but I have my wireless headset in, and it's ringing. Yeah. I heard something fire up. Okay. Robert says, could the two of us post and respond in Slack in a live exchange so you can watch? We did that a little bit. And also, it's no different than any other chat interface as far as that goes. So Messenger or the Skype, they all kind of work the same. Kay is saying, could you use Slack instead of comments features that's the question that you
which I touched on.
John, how secure is Slack? Can sensitive information and documents be exchanged?
It is secure. It's more secure with the paid plans, but we've always said, again, it is going in the cloud. So anything, they have SSL and all, or they have high level of security. The more as you pay for it, but there are certain things you probably will. I don't put my tax information online. There's certain things you probably wouldn't want to do
because it's all being synced through a server. There's a risk. So and there might be an integration that does that encrypts information for you within Slack. But for me, it's as secure as Dropbox. I consider it to be as secure as I would consider Dropbox or Evernote. There are things that we just don't share in those environments, and I would say that Slack has the same level of security. Certainly, it's as secure as your email. If you look at it that way, I would say it is. Yes.
And they are, and they do take security very seriously. In fact, what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to drop this into the chat. Except it didn't do it the way I wanted to. I'm going to drop it into the chat here, because that way you could see exactly what they talk about here. Slack.com/security. It is. They are very serious about it, and we dive into this more in the course too. Like it's definitely something Lee talks about.
Luis is asking about privacy.
Same. Again. You're only going to want people on your team that are, like, if you're on a public team, like I am with ConvertKit and all that stuff, you're probably, again, as soon as you would say I'm going to be on a team, you're going to be, whatever you put in that team is going to be open for ConvertKit to use as they want, right? So same thing with productivity, as there's privacy stuff. Now, I know there's another account. So Apollo mentioned a little bit earlier, later on, she said, they said, well, you can't read other people's direct messages if you're a small business owner. And that has to do with permissions as well. The free team, you can't do that. Permissions, I think you have a bit more flexibility with it. But I think, again, with privacy, check out the security documents that Slack's provided. But I think that if you're in a team, you want to, again, if you're going to chat with somebody private messaging wise, you got to remember that, nothing you put online is going to be 100% private. So just be mindful of that.
Yep. Sandra's asking the quality of uploaded video. It's all uploaded at high def, Sandra. So it's really going to depend on your bandwidth and what's happening as far as being served. We host it all on YouTube and all the videos on YouTube. So it's whatever quality you normally get from YouTube, you can expect from these videos.
Yeah.
Louis asks that he paid for Slack Made Easy, and he said it was a problem before. Yeah, I remember we talked. Actually, we spoke with you when you had the issue. He found some areas of the course lacking, and as I said then, you do get access to the new version of the course here.
Steve has said, "Do we get the course on an ongoing basis?" Yep, it's for life, and yeah. He's gone through your Evernote course a bunch of times.
Has always been, once you've purchased a course off us, you're on the team for the life of that course. So yes.
Mm-hmm. So Tom asked a question. I can jump in this. So he wants to know how he might use this with his clients as a life insurance agent. So how you do that? My thoughts would be that you have channels that are general information. So like, hey, go here to learn about this. Again, the great thing is you can update things. You can add posts. You can do things like that. People can ask you general questions in there. And you can invite certain people to certain channels if you want. So you could have channels related to, whole life, term life, like you could do all that. And then you could direct message people in Slack if you wanted to. But as you might not have seen when I showed it, there's not really much direct messaging I do in the ConvertKit community because I'm not talking to people other than in the public channels. Yet with the beta community, I was able to reach out to the founder of that Timular device and say, hey, I'm having some issues. So it's a matter of you framing it out and saying it's kind of like, you're setting up almost like a forum and saying, hey, okay, well, here's where all this information lives. And if you guys want to check it out, like a wiki, you can say, hey, this is where I have this, and it can be updated at any given time. And it gives you some real advantages. Plus, again, people get notified when things get updated, so it shows up. I think there's lots of potential there.
Okay, Terry's asking if there's any calendaring in Slack to set up calls, etc. Yes, indeed. There's integration for Google Calendar, but there's also integration into several of the scheduling apps where you have the online scheduling is built into Slack, so that it'll carry through. So you have all of that built into as one of the integrations. You can just do a quick search on Slack. It'll tell you what each integration is. It's pretty easy to discover if the one that's going to fit in your particular mix is there. Ken K says, so could I have my 15-member team and then use different channels for projects and the general to talk to all? I would set it up that way. I would set up a 15-member team and then have that's exactly what you do. Different channels and a general channel for general chat. Yeah. That's exactly how I do it. And
so when you set up your team, everybody gets an invite to the general channel, and then you invite select people to the other channels, and they only see that stuff. Now, again, if you're not paying for Slack, if you're going with the free version, then any people could join those other channels, like, you know what I mean? Because they're not guests, so you can't manage the permissions as much. But if it's a trusted team, most of those people aren't going to want to see all that stuff anyway. They're not going to want to see like all the stuff going on. So I think that's exactly a great way to get started with it, Ken.
When we set up ours, we set up one channel that was everybody but Mike, so we could talk about Mike. It was awesome.
And I did. And the thing is, they don't see the channel, by the way. So Steve actually, what's funny is Steve was actually adding the new channels for the course. And I said, could you tell me what the name of the new channel is so I could actually direct people to it? I can't see it unless I go in and search for it. So we
never did
you almost have to be invited. Yeah.
Michelle says, you mentioned team conversations in Asana was likely created as a response to Slack. Why would a smaller team using Asana need Slack? Wouldn't it be better to keep everything in one place and use the conversations area of Asana? That's a possibility, but Asana is not as good a communication manager as Slack is.
Yeah.
So
I think that
instant messaging feel.
Now, I use Asana with my team. I find that the team conversations is lacking. It's not in the most intuitive of places. I find the comments are fine. We see comments happening in Asana all the time, but the communication is more about, I think the team conversations, because they're directed around normally a project or a task, they tend to get very funneled. Whereas sometimes I don't want to have that. In fact, a lot of times I don't. So we had on the last webinar, we had somebody say, I have 25 members of a team and 20 guests, and they're all in Asana, and we're using team conversations. In a situation like that, I'd say stay there. Don't ask guests and stuff to try to move into Slack. But because we were in Slack first, number one, and because Slack is a better communication tool overall, I think that there's some benefits to using Slack, especially with the integration it has with Asana. There are ways to use those two together, and I use them quite seamlessly, to be honest.
Yeah. And with Slack, you do not have the sense of application overload the way we do with others, is because it very much seems to run at an operating system level. When you install the app, the way notifications come in, it's not invasive. You don't feel like you're switching back and forth when you're using it. So it should not be a concern. Again, we're a team of 5. And now that we've got kind of our feet under us and understanding exactly where the communication should live, we're all really comfortable doing task-specific conversations in Asana. Everything else in Slack works very well for us.
Yep.
Michelle's asking how those who have already purchased Slack Made Easy are going to get access to the new course. It's going to be in the exact same group or the exact same team as it was before. We'll have to make sure that we send out a notification to everybody to let them know that there's the refreshed content, but you'll be able to go in just as you were before. How well does it integrate with Evernote? Jerry asks brilliantly. I don't use any Evernote native integration, but instead I just create shared notes within Evernote, and then I paste them into Slack where my team needs access to them. That's how I use it. Mike might have a more sophisticated method, but it works great from that perspective.
Zapier is going to allow you to do a lot of integrations that Slack doesn't do natively. So Zapier will help you integrate with Evernote very easily. Zapier will help you integrate with Nozbe, which is another question coming up. That's how you do it. So, and Zapier actually has reduced their pricing too. So their pricing used to be a little bit more. I used to be more hesitant to recommend Zapier just because of the way the pricing was. It's come down significantly, and I use it. If you're using a tool like Nozbe, OmniFocus, again, Evernote, there are lots of tools out there. If you're using polls like Typeform, OneNote, Zapier will help you with that. So there are ways to integrate quite tightly with Slack using Zapier as kind of like the middleman along the way. Good.
So that's the last of the questions in the bin. If there are a few more come in, we will deal with them. But if not, a reminder that the Evernote, the Slack Made Easy course available for registration now. Great way to get your team on board with a money back guarantee. So click join up, and we look forward to seeing you there. If you want to see this replay, or you want to share this with team members who are a little bit reluctant to get on board the Slack, and you're trying to kind of move them in the direction, you can share this webinar with them afterwards. The replay links will be sent to you, and you can have others access you can just share the link with others. If you have a problem, if you just click on the email and the replay doesn't load, just copy and paste that URL into your browser, and it should work fine. Mike, thanks for your time today. That's heavy lifting after your trip yesterday.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for joining us today. Thanks, Robert, Nicole. Thanks to everybody for being in here. It was a lot of fun. Again, I don't talk about apps as much as I used to. Slack is an app that I literally. I mean, while I was traveling, I was able to keep in touch with my communication as I was traveling with my team thanks to Slack. I didn't even have to touch email. So again, if you're looking for a way to, build community, build your team, and boost your productivity all at the same time, you can't go wrong with Slack. And Slack Made Easy is going to help you get there faster, quicker, and better than ever.
Till next time, folks, have fun storming a castle.
Take care.